Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
Thank you very much for having me today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So again, thank you for having me today, and thank you everyone for joining. I know it's still morning time, so good morning, good morning. And it's also nice to see where some of you are from. So thank you for putting that in the chat as well. So many people here for their CAEs. Just looking through the chat, I just wanted to get an idea of the reason for attending, because this, I'll be asking some questions throughout the presentation and using the chat box. So feel free to put questions in the chat box. I'll do my best to navigate that with you. And best practices sounds good. Maximizing consolidating data, best ways to use data, and best practices. I'm hoping to learn methods of pulling data together from multiple sources. And that is a big one, especially for associations, how to bring data from different sources. Okay, so good. I think you're in the right place. It seems like, based on what you put in the chat, is similar to what we'll be talking about. So, so far, I think we're in good shape. So good for us, all of us. Let's go ahead and dive into channeling association data into one place. And I thought that was kind of a funny title I put together. So first, I just wanted to tell a story. Just a quick story. A few months ago, I was speaking with an executive director right after their annual conference, which is, as all of us know, the best time to talk to anyone. It's not busy or stressful at that time, but I was having a conversation about their event. The event went well. The attendance was strong. The sponsors were happy, mostly. The staff were exhausted and proud of the work that they had put in. And my experience is usually after a conference, for some reason, that last day after the closing, we'll have a board meeting. That's when the board is all in one place. So we will have a board meeting and talk about the event while it's still fresh and new, but also coming off of 1,000 hours of work that week. It's such a challenging time. And the board will ask, and this is what happened in this meeting, is what was the ROI of this event compared to last year? So before the numbers, before the reconciliation, before getting all of your data points together, what is the ROI? And this has happened to me multiple times, so it really resonated. When this happened, the room went quiet, and not because the data didn't exist, but because it lived in for them, it lived in 5 different systems. So for this particular organization, the registration was in one platform. Sponsorship revenue, that was tracked somewhere else. And a lot of times you'll have a sales and sponsorship person. Engagement data lived in the event app. And so a lot of the engagement, gamification, all of the different things live in your event app. So that's 3. Continuing education credits, so like a Maple LMS or an LMS system that you have where the credits are being captured. In another system, that's 4. And then membership renewals. If you're doing any type of membership renewals where they're in the AMS system that you have. So registration, sponsorship, engagement, these are off the top of my head. Continuing education credits, so the LMS system, and membership renewal. So what did they do to solve the problem? Immediately, and this is what I've done time and time again, they exported spreadsheets. They did the same thing. They reconciled their reports manually. They built out their binders of data from what happened at the conference, and they built a PowerPoint that looked confident. They had all the information. They were able to pull it from all of these different systems. They were able to put it into one single binder. They were able to synthesize that data. They were then able to put it into a PowerPoint slide deck and then be able to present that information. And this is the challenge that organizations face. And I have experienced this firsthand. So when I was talking with the executive director, um, it looked confident. It looked like the information was there, but it also looked like it was stitched together because that's what we're doing. We're stitching that data together. And so um, he said something that stuck with me, and it's we have data everywhere, but we don't have clarity. And that's a big part of what I'm talking about today is gaining that clarity. And is the data actually in the room with us, or are we just pretending it is? So let's first talk about my first question. If you can put it in the chat, how many systems does your association use to manage events, membership, marketing, finance, and learning? How many can you count how many different systems your organization is using? And I want to find if there is one person that's just using one system. Three, okay. 5 to 8, that's typical. 4 to 5, that's good. 3 to 100 plus. That sounds that's I would believe it. I think that's fair. I would say on average it's looking like maybe 5 or 6. I think 5 or 6 is about average. And while we're here talking about it, how many of them are connected? And I'm going to talk about the difference between creating an API and connecting it that way. But um, oh, good. It resonated with somebody. They thought I was describing their organization. That I think we're in. I think everyone's in the right place. 0 are connected. 2 maybe connect. Okay, and then we're going to dive into what does that mean for connection also. So thank you for putting that in the chat. Let's keep moving. I know I just have an hour and I want to cover a lot of different things. So um, just briefly, again, my name is Gil Gonzalez. I'm the director of events for EVA, and we're an event technology company. We create ecosystems out of the event tech, but I have been in conferences, associations for the last 20 years. I've managed large conventions, international events. I've also worked in corporate. So I've run a gamut of conferences, events, special events, anything that you can really imagine around the US, and then also some global events as well. Um, and so that's sort of what led me here is also I have 6 years of experience in event technology. So kind of being on the other side of it as well. So I'm bringing that experience here. And if you imagine what we were looking at 6 years ago in the event tech space, we've come a long way in such a short amount of time. So we'll kind of talk about that. But this is not a technology presentation. It's more of a leadership clarity conversation. We're going to move from leadership pressure, fragmentation, hidden costs, and then into what connected operations actually look like and how to start. So that's what we'll be covering today. I just wanted to show an outline of what that looked like. And these are not theoretical questions. These are board level questions. Which programs truly drive engagement? Which is revenue actually growing? Which events create measurable value? What should we stop doing? So one of the things that was eye-opening to me that I never considered, and sometimes you just have to connect the dots, right? And reports actually describe the past. So when you're pulling those reports, you're getting that information, you're putting it into a slide deck, but you're looking in the rear view mirror. You're looking at what already happened, and yes, it matters. It informs what you're going to do next. And that's what leadership wants to know. They want to know, what are you going to do next based on the information? So pull together your reports and you can sort of then communicate what happened. But it really needs to move from shorter span of this is what we experienced, this is where we're going as a result. And the data needs to drive that conversation. So to answer these questions confidently, you need three capabilities. First, you need to see behavior over time. Behavior over time means not just attendance, but engagement before, during, and after. So you need to understand, what is it that an attendee is doing before your event, during your event, after your event? What is a member? How is a member engaging with your system, with your resources throughout the year? But before those events, during the events, after the event. Second, you need to connect revenue to that behavior. So, what do I mean by that? It's revenue connection means not just ticket sales, but downstream membership, sponsorship renewals, and long-term value. And as a conference director at a medical organization, it's hard because I was a conference director and an education director at the same time, and professional development. So I had a longer title. But my thing was that I was so in the minutia and trying to also do high level thinking while trying to operate my teams and get them functioning in a way that was all streamlined. Um, it didn't necessarily occur to me. I wasn't at a place where I could start figuring out, if I have non-members who come to my conference, and they leave, and perhaps I have, we always have the organization exhibit booth where people can go and learn about member resources and things like that. But perhaps they renew, or perhaps they are actually going from non-member to member, or maybe I give a 1 month time span after the event where they then convert to membership. What is my conversion rate? I am the conference director. I'm the education director. I'm building this thing that happens over the course of 4 or 5 days. What is that downstream membership? What is the sponsorship renewal? What is the long-term value of these events that we're creating that happen for 4 or 5 days and then they're gone, and then you start organizing it again? What is that downstream membership that should add to the value of that event? So, and the third thing is you need consistent definitions across those departments. So consistent definitions mean finance, membership, events are reporting from the same logic. So one thing that I always thought about is math. Math is sort of the equalizer, right? It doesn't have to be a different language. They're numbers, and you can speak to other individuals who are that speak a different language, but math is the great equalizer. In the same way, you need to find consistent definitions in finance, and we've experienced this with our event registration and our check-in. But our event registration is making sure that what I'm saying is a ticket sale or an attendee sale is the same thing as, let's say, Fontiva is, or your AMS system is reading it, or the finance team is reading it in a certain way. The finance team talks in debits and credits. I don't. I don't talk in debit, but we need to find common ground, and those definitions need to be the same and consistent. And that consistency in reporting and the nomenclature and the words that you're using are consistent too. So those two have to match up, and that then informs your data. Without those three capabilities, every board deck becomes a manual reconciliation exercise, and that's really the end of it. So those three, and I'll read them again just really quick. The first one is you need to see behavior over time. You need to connect revenue to that behavior, and you need consistent definitions. So those are really important. So let me go to my next slide. And this is what a lot of you talked about as well is the fragmented systems. And so if you look at this slide, none of these systems are broken. They just don't know each other. So most associations have data integration. Very few have data orchestration. And this is what I was talking about in the beginning of talking about data integration. When you're talking about two systems being connected through an API, are you moving? It's essentially moving data from one place to another, but you have to be the conductor, right? You have to be the person who is orchestrating that data. So, and very few people, you're not alone. This very few organizations have this now, but they will. It has to go in that way, especially with AI and getting AI ready, which we'll talk about in a few moments. But the integration, just to kind of define it, is moving data from one system to another, where orchestration um, ensures identity, revenue definitions, engagement signals, and reporting logic. And it makes sure that all of those are consistent everywhere. So once they're consistent everywhere, now you can start harnessing that data. So just integration moves the data, orchestration makes it usable just on a high level. It allows you to use that data instead of just populating first name, last name, email address, and my favorite color into a profile. That's very basic level, just moving data from one place to another. And when I start making the consistency in the data, so let's say um, my favorite color, my first name, last name, favorite color, dietary needs, or um, my favorite shirt. I don't know. Just like special customizations of who I am as an attendee or as a member, asking those specific questions. Now I can start using that. What I filled out on a survey, how I felt about a speaker, what I put into social media with a hashtag, getting some of those behavioral analytics. Now I can put that into a same place and use the dashboards and use AI and start connecting everything to use that data for prediction. And we'll get there in a minute. But I just kind of wanted to explain the difference between integration and orchestration. And there are, in my mind, there's four pillars required for connecting that data, for connected data. It's identity, one unified person ID. So a lot of times it's a ID, which tags to a person. So like my email address, revenue attribution, so standardized revenue logic, and that has to do with the types of things that I'm purchasing as a member, as a non-member, as a attendee, as a workshop, pre-conference workshop attendee, all the different things that are connected to me as an individual. Maybe I'm also going through the LMS system and purchasing webinars. I'm also purchasing books. Our medical organization would sell books. When I worked for the American Physical Therapy Association, they had a whole line of athletic wear. So what is it that what is the revenue that I'm generating for the organization? What's connected to me specifically? If you don't know, and you should, I'm hoping to put these out there and then ask yourself, could I find this person and find out what they purchased over the last year? Let's just say 12 months. Would I know what they purchased? Is it easy to find? And then time. So I talked about the last 12 months, but the longitudinal visibility. So how long has the person been a member, non-member? How long have they been participating with your organization? You need to know that, especially for those long-term members. But you also want to, you're in sort of a nurturing phase, whether it's long-term, mid-tier, you're doing emerging leaders perhaps, or students, or people who are just new members. You have the new member session at your conference, but what are you doing beyond that? And how are you nurturing them? And how are you marketing to them? And do you have automation set up that automatically know that these are new members based on the date at which they purchase their membership? Are those things that are in your ecosystem? And they're not, as I say it, it's not too far fetched. It's something that we create daily. And they're set up within, for us, it's within the CRM, and the AMS is our starting point. But if one pillar is missing, then your clarity collapses. And if you remember from my story at the beginning, the executive director was talking about clarity. They're lacking the clarity with the data that they have. All of the associations, whether you're on spreadsheets or you have 5 systems, 2 systems, 9 systems, or 100 plus, somebody said, there, if you are swimming in data, it's just how do you pull all that data into one place and how do you make that functional? Because that's going to have lasting effects on so many different places, and I'll kind of outline that as well. But question number 2. If your board asks tomorrow, which behaviors most strongly predict renewal, would you be able to answer the question? This is a yes or no. Could you answer confidently? I know why my members are renewing. Okay, we have some no's. Absolutely not. I like that. Definitive. 2 are connected. Okay, no, yes. And for those that put yes, is it because you sent out a renewal packet and then they then filled it out, and you could see the correlation between, they received the renewal, they were told it would lapse, and then they renewed? Is that a yes, or if there's a longer, just a few words on the yes part? I'll keep going, but I'm just curious to know. That's a good one, Amy. So they have a very small membership, and they all know each other. And I worked for a group that there were 60 once. It was a very small organization, and they had 60 board members. And so they all knew each other, and they were basically just always members. They were always board members. So that's a good one. But I guess there's a lot of no's and some yeses. And if the answer is it would take some work, that's not a data volume issue, it's a connection issue. And so that's what we're going to talk about next, which is sort of the hidden cost of our broken data. So having our data siloed and having the information in housed in separate separate systems is where now we want to turn to. What is that cost? What is it that it's like, sure, these systems don't talk, so I'm going to export the spreadsheets, I'm going to synthesize the data, I'm going to create my slide decks based on the information that I've gotten. I'm able to read the system, or perhaps, and this is key for membership, my overlap with membership was minimal. I felt as though with conferences and education, we were the quality part of a large part of the quality part of the organization, that we were providing these resources, tools, the educational opportunities for our members to keep them coming back and being members. So we provided a lot of the reason, of why they were members in the first place. And so my overlap with membership and how I worked with membership was I would sit in a director's meeting and we would report out, here's what I know, here's what we're doing. And then we would go about our business. That was essentially what we would do. But I think there's a much larger piece and an overlap that should be happening within these organizations between membership, conferences. We need to break down a lot of those silos. And data can do that. when we start with breaking down the data silos. So this slide right here highlights the operational reality. So decisions made on partial visibility, impact difficult to prove, staff time lost to spreadsheets, strategy driven by assumptions. So this is not a technology gap, it's a connection gap. And there's a lot of issues around the connection. So manual reporting costs. Let's talk about if I have to do these spreadsheets. Maybe it's 10, 20 hours per month. You have conflicting totals, and I'll talk about that in a minute. That's happened to me. Inconsistent attendance definitions, delayed leadership insight. Um, with the conflicting totals, if I create my own budget at the end when I'm reconciling, if I go to finance and my numbers don't match finance, it's a problem. It's a lot of matching. And so now I've got to go back and I've got to figure out why aren't is there vendor partners that haven't um, submitted their invoices and I'm just not aware of it. Perhaps we only paid 50%. It's only showing on the thing in finance, but they haven't gotten the remaining balance. Um, there's so many different reasons why these totals could conflict, but now I've got to spend time on it. If there's inconsistent attendance definitions, which all of us should be aware of. What does it mean if I'm talking to marketing? And I always use this, but if I'm talking to marketing, they're going to say that I had, not an unreasonable number, but let's say my conference has about, I think, 7,000 attendees and marketing. Well, if I add in all these people and maybe there were some guests and some people standing around the lobby, maybe it's more like 10,000. I don't know. But for marketing purposes, that sounds better. And I'm not saying it's just a slight embellishment that happens in marketing that I've experienced, but maybe not all the time. But inconsistent attendance definitions, we just need clarity. We need to be able to see these dashboards and we need to see this information of how many actual attendees. I also want to know non-members, members, student volunteers. I want to know a breakdown of the exhibit booth staff plus the exhibit booth staff, sponsors, if sponsors brought tickets. And then I also want a breakdown of the new members. I want all of these so that there's no inconsistency in attendance, because now I can also divide that data up into who is a member, non-member, full registrant. Perhaps they came for one day. What are all the metrics? These need to be consistent. Otherwise, your attendance numbers are completely false, and they can be false in 100 different ways based on an interpretation. So feeding this data into analytics, dashboards, into the way that we're doing it with our ecosystem, it's feeding it all into a central location. So all that information is coming into one location tied to the membership data so that marketing knows to go into the CRM and AMS. They can market through that. They can build or set up marketing tools that will allow them to, if they're new members, automate a lot of the process of outreach, get things in front of them, but also learn the behavior of what these attendees or members are doing. If they are attending, conferences, webinars, and they filled out surveys, and those survey information, all of that can flow into your reporting and dashboards. Eventually we get to AI. So the other thing that we're doing right now is getting all of our clients AI ready, bringing all of this data into, this is all fresh of top of mind for me because we're doing this in real time, helping them with governance. Governance is a huge part to make sure that your staff don't, let's put it this way, they can navigate the AI appropriately for the organization. So applying the governance tools that they need to be able to be successful and not overstep in any way. But AI within their CRM and AMS in a secure environment, not on, let's say AWS or another server, it's within your membership database. I know I said it was going to not be technical, so I need to backtrack a little bit and just say in your membership database. But I think we're all familiar with CRMs and AMSs on this call, so I think that should be okay. But really, it's just what I'm referring to is your membership database. So many associations are exploring the AI, but artificial intelligence without that data integrity that I've been talking about is basically just an expensive automation because it's not able to give you, without the right data, without the right information. And even if I just pulled my event information and membership together and put those two together to learn behavioral patterns, I am missing the education department and the full LMS system of all the information that they have. So I don't have a clear picture. That's not correct. So all of that information about your attendees, about your members needs to come into one place, and then it can start building a real AI experience. The AI is meant to support, it's meant to provide insight, predictability. It's not meant to replace anyone. I was at PCMA earlier this year, and somebody said something like, they asked a question about if they thought that AI was going to replace meeting planners or replace other roles in an association. And I like the guy's answer. The guy said that it's not AI that's going to replace, it's people that don't learn how to use it, people that don't learn how to harness AI. Those are the people that, will find it more challenging to work in their roles. So I like that answer, and I think that that's really important here as we're trying to build, develop, make sure that we're in a secure environment and use these advanced tools in a safe way. And I think we'll continue to grow and navigate, but advances in technology have been around since the uproar of moving from radio to TV. I always like to point that one out. That was a huge problem. So here we are moving from more of a static websites and Google to AI that a lot of people are using, like Google, they say. So AI requires clean identity, historical behavioral data, unified data set, and governance. So those are the four main things that I've touched on. And if systems are fragmented, AI produces faster confusion. And I think that that's really important as well. It's with fragmented data, it's just not giving you the full picture. Also, Kenneth, you actually are saying exactly what I'm saying. Technology has been around since caveman. That's exactly what I think as well. So we just have to learn to navigate it together. So there's 5 stages of data maturity. And stage 1, manual spreadsheets. Stage 2, dashboards, but siloed. So we can have dashboards for days, but if they're only presenting part of the information, that's not as helpful to us in creating that full picture to help inform us as to next steps. Connected data sets, stage 3, and then stage 4, predictive modeling, which is what we're in right now, and stage 5, automated optimization. So being able to predict, I like to use what we're doing with our AI and analytics. I can put into the chatbot, if I, based on last year's F&B, what do you recommend my numbers should be for this upcoming year? Based on this criteria of location, maybe, and it'll pull all the registration information, it will pull the F&B information, all the different things, and it can actually provide insight. It's not definitive, but it's insight into what the recommendations are, and this applies to all of the different things, putting all that information into one place. But I will say most associations are typically between stage 1 and stage 2. And just to go back through stage 1, manual spreadsheets, I get a lot of that. I travel all around to exhibit and be at all these different fun conferences and talk to a lot of individuals, and there's I wish I wasn't so shocked, but there's a lot of spreadsheets still happening. And stage two, which was dashboards, but they're siloed. So that's stage one, stage two, and I think that's where a lot of associations are right now. Um, and so I think part of the problem too is that they then try to jump to stage four, which is predictive modeling. So if you're going from dashboards to predictive modeling, you're skipping an entire stage, which is connecting your data set. That's where you should be at this point, is figuring out and working with teams to connect your ecosystem of all the data and all the things, all the tools that you have into one into one place. And Dan, I will provide this as a handout, and maybe on the site they can put some of my handouts with some of these layouts. I don't have that as part of my slide deck. But I will provide handouts, and maybe they can send them out to you, so that you have the five stages. But also there's some other things, the key phases, there's some pillars that are important. Just kind of trying to provide a blueprint of what I know from experience, what I've seen work, and what I've seen not work. And then stage three, connecting the data set, is basically the unlock. That's where you are right now. Let's do from more of a operational standpoint. Let's talk about an example, I think, with this one. Modern. And I'm thinking of, let's imagine your annual conference has 2,000 attendees, 600 first-time participants, 40 sponsors, and 1.2 million in revenue. So now, though, that's the layout. Attendee member conversion first. What percentage of the first-time attendees become members within 90 days? I talked about after the conference, maybe the first 30 days, but let's do 90 days. If 10% convert and there's 600 first-time participants, and we have, just to make it easy, 10%, that's 60 new members. So you've gained 60 new members, which is, if it's $400 in dues, I don't know how much you're charging for your dues. Some don't really charge a whole lot, and some charge a lot more, depending on the resources. But let's just say it's $400 in dues. That's $24,000 in downstream revenue. So let me go over the scenario again. If there was 2,000 attendees, you have 600 first-time participants, 40 sponsors, 1.2 million in revenue. 10% convert, that's 60 new members. At $400 in dues, that's $24,000 in downstream revenue. I have done so many citywides, so many conferences where it has never connected with me to start thinking about the downstream revenue of what is it. I know how much money I bring in. I know what my budget is. I know that I am working always to work on the revenue. I want to cut expenses, and I want to build quality while cutting expenses, and work on my bottom line and do all these things. Not once did it occur to me, I wish it had, to bring in what is it that what's being converted on site. So that's an example of something that I hadn't considered, but what is that downstream revenue? And that changes a lot of how you calculate your ROI. So when the board, again, going back to my story, when the board asks, what is the ROI? You won't know that the first day at the last day of the conference, but let's say 90 days out, you might have a greater picture of what that looks like. As far as downstream revenue, you should, in real time. Always know what information is coming in, because once you have that, all of these components tied together, you can um, do the different stages, but you'll have predictive analytics, and you'll have um, not just what happened at the conference in your dashboards, but also be able to start making recommendations in real time for what to do next time. And you aren't synthesizing that data. That data is being presented to you because it's all connected. It has to be that full picture that's being presented to you. Now you use your experience and your skills and your training and all of the years of everything that you've been doing, and then you're able to then in real time talk to the board about, this is what happened, this is where we think we should go, or this is what we want to explore for next year. We haven't quite got there yet, but we're working through it. But here's some suggestions, and this is what we can do next year that will increase this, and that will answer the question of this, and it will build our ROI and some different. You'll actually have answers. So the other thing is, with ROI and sponsors, we talk a lot about what's the value prop, what's the sponsorship ROI, what's the exhibitor ROI, how do we track that? Same thing with marketing. How do we track the ROI for a marketing department? And what this data allows you to do is, with sponsor attribution, is engagement, session attendance, follow-up, and content interaction. And we do a lot of this too, where what is the engagement, not just if I'm a sponsor, if I'm engaging with if I'm engaging with something that they've, 500 people have your room key, or the branded room keys they hand out, or we handed out 3,000 bags, or whatever, that's not a real number. It's what we've done. But have we really put that in front of people? So I want to know, what is the engagement? Maybe if they're on the site and we're promoting, how many people clicked on the sponsor link on the site? I want to create a full package for my sponsors of how many people attended a sponsored session. We have session scanners, so they scan into the session, but in real time, that information is already in their CRM and AMS system. That happens in real time with the session scanning, and that's also for CE compliance as well. And then follow up. Who's following up with these sponsors with additional information? So it goes, and then the content interaction of what on-site activations they may have, things like that. But there's a lot to it, and I'm just high leveling it. I know that I've got an hour to talk about a lot of different things, and I've got about 15 minutes. So I'm just going to high level that one, where with the data, with the content coming into one place, you can then connect with your sponsors in a much greater way to be able to put together a package of their ROI, which then should lead to increased sponsorship, or at least retention. It's way beyond just, I attend a lot of these conferences. I'll get an attendee list. I'll get the individuals that I scanned with my notes, and that's about it. And it usually comes at a pretty hefty price tag. And I get an attendee list, and I get, these are the people that you scanned, and nothing in addition to that. And it's part of the way we're set up right now. It's helpful. Otherwise, I wouldn't continue to go. But I think with these systems, there's a much better and greater way. And this is what we're working with our clients on now, is building those packages that don't put more work on the staff. The first question at every dev meeting that I'm in: how do we make this easier for the association staff? A lot of times you could have, I have clients with 3 staff members, and then there's larger ones, and they could have 100, 150, it doesn't matter. The idea is that this is a streamlined approach from 3 to 150 to 200, but it should still be able to easily show you the information, present the information, automate the information, and go through those processes. But everything needs to be connected. Engagement, retention. What if members who attend events earn their CEs? And this is a big part of working in a medical organization. When worked at a medical organization, it was largely built, our conferences were largely built around CEs. And if they renew, now I know if CEs, they renew 80%, 82%, let's just say, while those who don't renew at 54%. So if I'm attending a conference for CEs, it's typically 82% are going to renew. I know this based on the numbers. While those that don't, that aren't attending for CEs, it's 54%. So let that sink in. Basically, with CEs, 82%. If they don't need CEs, 54% renewal. So that insight kind of changes your investment strategy of where you're willing to put money in. Sure, you want to get conversion. Sure, you want to get people who maybe aren't there for the CEs. Maybe they need a certificate of attendance. Maybe they're there for educational, but they don't necessarily require the CEs. And maybe they're there for networking. But really, that type of information automatically points you in a direction, and it's real time and it's factual. So the last part is the question that comes up is they look at, well, what should we change, or basically what should we get rid of, what should we stop funding, and with the connection of data, instead of, I mean, my experience, I'm asked essentially from my experience to lead to my opinion on what I believe is the right course of action. Where when you connect all this data, it gives you permission to reallocate resources in a way that you can point to the data. You can identify programs with high effort, and then you can identify those programs with low long-term impact. So you're starting to divide up and put numbers to the programs that you're running, and then it kind of informs you as far as where you want to go with that information. And let me ask, I have to ask another question. If you had this level of visibility, what decision would change first in your organization? So if you could kind of identify all of the different things in your organization in real time, what would you do if I looked at this and I would say, oh, well, based on this, then I really need to increase that? Or with this level of visibility, what would you do? I think hire new people is always going to be a good answer, especially at associations. They always cutting things that you don't need to do. That's a good one. Sunsetting ineffective programs. And I think a lot of us know, and sometimes they're carryovers, sometimes they're legacy programs, and we can't necessarily quantify. There's some people that really want to keep these legacy programs. They've been in the organization for a long time. That's what they do. That's what they know. And we can't necessarily quantify. We know they have. We know that it's not even sunset. Perhaps there's a way to give it a glow up or do something, add new talent, add new life, breathe new life into some of these programs. But these tools and providing this information now starts pointing you in the right direction of maybe what to do. And again, I mentioned the chatbots earlier, but having that information in one place and say, this program is an issue. Wondering, maybe not even an issue, but this is something that I'm not sure whether should sunset based on the programming that I already have. What is the comparison that it can make, et cetera. And then I get that type of information, and then I can use that to create. And a lot of this is creating a rubric, or you want to have a lot of clarity over what the programming is, what the value is, what the downstream value that I talked about earlier. But you're getting a greater picture other than, well, this looks good. And I know that people aren't really attending or engaging with this anymore. Do you know that? Are there, we talked about the hidden costs earlier. Are there hidden engagements that are happening with some of the programming that we're unaware of. I'm thinking of webinars and people viewing webinars, and I'm thinking no one views the webinars; they're out of date. And really, um, there's a lot of traction there, and maybe I should increase their webinars. But I won't know that until I put all the data in one place. And also, that includes surveys, feedback. I know that my membership department would send out surveys. I also send out surveys for the conference, for education, for the education committees. I would send out all kinds of surveys, but so is membership. And we never connected on that. We didn't. We should have. There's again, the silos are real, and having this data in one place. My goal for organizations is that when they go to those director meetings and they go to the executive meetings, they come and they already know the information about my event. I know the information about their marketing, and I can see it all in the dashboards. I can see what education is coming out, programming. So when we come to those meetings, those weekly meetings that we talk about everything that's happening, we download quickly and then go back to work. They already have that information. So we come to those meetings and talk about ideas. We talk about moving forward. We talk about, what are the next steps, or how can we elevate the level of what we're doing, or how can we hone in and create individualized experiences for our members, individualized experiences for our attendees. Once your membership base is so large, you lose that. But through automation, through these tools, you're able to create more of a special pathway that is individualized for your members and attendees, and it's automated so that it's not more drain or strain on your staff, and that's really the key as well. So let me go to the one shared operational view that we sort of talked about. And I just wanted to show quickly the event ecosystem that we work with, which is, you have your registration, your check-in app, lead retrieval, analytics, and AI, an event site builder. All that information goes into your CRM or AMS, creating the ecosystem with your LMS and the other tools that you're using. And it's meant to build that full life cycle. And this slide really shows you the orchestration, what orchestration looks like when event life cycle data lives inside the CRM. But you don't need to connect everything. You need to connect everything. You need to connect what drives decisions, and so make sure that it really includes, and when I say not everything, like I don't need to know maybe my favorite color. I don't need to know like certain things. The key level set is going to be unique ID, event attendance, membership status, renewal date, revenue fields, engagement signals. Those are the 6 elements. And I know I went fast. I'm going to provide a handout, and hopefully they'll be able to post that on the website. But essentially, it's the unique ID, event attendance, renewal date, revenue fields, membership status, engagement signals. And basically, we're shooting for clarity and replacing uncertainty. And I think that I know that they need a few minutes, but I would also recommend maybe audit your board's top 10 questions, identify data ownership, who has that data, who's operating those systems, build one connected use case in the next 60 days. So the biggest thing is don't jump all the way in. Find one small way to use a connected use case, and basically small wins build confidence. So you don't have to jump all the way in and tomorrow I need to connect all of my data. Just start small. Start with sponsorship. Start with sponsorship as whatever you're using for sponsorship, connect all of those pieces, and then start building more of a cohesive data point for sponsorship, and then see how that works. And then I guess just to close, it's basically I guess what I just to close out, the connected data is not about more reports. It's about reducing uncertainty in leadership decisions. And I mentioned when identity, revenue, engagement, and time align, strategy becomes measurable. So clarity replaces uncertainty. Clarity replaces uncertainty. And so we're just using the data to provide that clarity, and we have to create a puzzle. I don't want to create a puzzle with missing pieces. That's not the clear picture of the puzzle. I need to create a puzzle with missing without missing pieces, because that's a real bummer if you do a puzzle and there are missing pieces to it. So it's not what it was intended to do. So that's all I have. I think that was I know I'm going to give that time back to you. Thank you so much for having me. I hope this was helpful. I will have the handouts and I will post those. I'll condense it into some of these key points that are really important. I hope that was helpful.